Hold.
Oh, I had it
there
on
you
mute.
go. Okay.
Sorry.
Oh,
I hit
yay.
the mute button by accident.
That's all right. That's all
It's
right.
always something, right? As Gilda Radner used to say.
That's great. Hi.
Hey.
It's so nice to meet you virtually.
I know. It's a weird intimacy, isn't it? It's like,
It
I don't
is.
know. I guess when you first meet a stranger, usually you see their whole body coming at you, and then you don't get the full on, connection right away. So
Yeah.
it's something. So yeah. So whatever you want to talk about, I'm happy to, flow along.
Awesome. So I'm just going to give a little introduction for
Okay.
the people watching, and then I'll get on with my my first question. So again, like I said before, thank you so much for agreeing to do this and taking the time to interview with me. Yeah. I'm a big fan of yours, a really big fan.
Oh, thank you.
I've been a fan of yours since the early 2000s, and you came into my awareness around the same time as James Redfield and Carole Adrienne were co-authoring the experiential guide.
Yeah.
So along with Gary Zukov and all those wonderful people, and Debbie Ford and so on. Right. And so you came into my awareness around then. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And so Penny, you're an intuitive, you're an empath and a clairvoyant, and you've been doing this since the late 70s. Right. It's amazing.
Tells you how, I've been around.
So, and throughout that time, you've written a number of wonderful and very practical books on spirituality and personal transformation, and 4 of which you're best known for, and that we'll talk about very shortly. But first, I want to mention that I find that you've had continued and amazing successes and success in your life, but you're not, and I mean this like with the biggest compliment, you're not outrageously famous. And when I first contacted you, you wrote me back personally, meaning like I didn't get a generic email from the team. You provided me with your personal information. In other words, like you were completely transparent with me from the very beginning of our interactions. And I found it clear and refreshing, and it was so fun to just like interact with you in that way. So I think that you really embody the teachings that you put forth. And from my perspective, I think that you have a beautiful balance and richness in your life, and you're kind of my idol. That's kind of what I want to go for. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really mean it. And so if it's okay with you, rather than you introducing yourself in the more conventional linear way of doing things, like from what you've done to where you've been to where you're going and why you're here. And so for the people watching to get to know you a little better, I'd like for you to tell us, like, in your now today, like, what's your heart's desire? What inspires you, or what gets your juices flowing, or that creative impulse that you have?
Yeah. Well, it's been the same for a lot of years. It's always first about creativity and that connection with the non-physical realm and the imaginal realm, where that kind of magic happens when you bridge it in and out, and I started as an artist designer, and then moved into intuitive development, and I studied a lot about pattern recognition and, what do they call it today? Design thinking, now they call it. But it was like a practical application of higher artistic consciousness that was practical in nature, that would solve problems. And so I was always kind of a blend of the earthy and the heavenly kind of, trying to bring it together. And the intuitive developed more and more and more and more and more. And I started looking deeper into how are things happening? What's the truth? What's the core truth? And I started seeing so much about the acceleration on the planet and then the transformational process, which still is the primary fascination for me of this evolution. And I haven't lost any interest at all in the creativity and doing different kinds of creativity. You need all your senses involved, and you need your body involved. But I feel like this this year of 2020 and COVID and all that, the beginning of the year, I was extremely excited about, I thought I was going to expand my scope, you know, and that it was a big jump year, and that I would be, oh, what would that look like, traveling and blah, 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 and all this, reaching lots more people. And that was my left brain talking. And then when COVID hit, then I got to the feeling that, it's going deep inside, and it's going to be, you know, and it's more about somehow my sphere is becoming, I don't know, larger in terms of encompassing more insight or time and space or dimensionality or something, that it was the non-physical world expanding, or my ability to be more of that, maybe. And what happened was I started losing interest in my stories and my history, and, you know, and the whole ego thing was like, I'm watching it happening out in the news and in politics, and I'm like less and less concerned with it myself. And like, who am I now? You know, I don't know. But I'm more here, you know, it's like an irony.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten to a point, and, you know, and I spent the year designing courses, online courses, and just learning how to do, what platforms to use and how to do it. And I kept thinking, I better get done with this, because I need to get this done so I can move on and write a new book. And I kept stalling, and then more things came up. So now here it is, almost the end of the year. And now I'm finally starting to think about writing a new book. And I have a couple ideas, and I've outlined a lot of it. So, but I love the writing. That is still one of my passions. The magic of it is a creative process also. And I have some ideas, and then as I go along and write, more stuff comes in and explains itself to me. And I don't, you know, I think I write with, I call it the writers in the sky. You know, it's like, okay, anybody who's good at writing, come in and let's do this together and see what we can do. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking at this point. But, you know, as you said, it's an interesting, I guess, another irony in some ways to dissolve ego, yeah, but yet also allow the field itself to connect you to the people who need you. You know, you can offer yourself, and if you try too hard and do the marketeering thing, I feel like it kind of squeezes off the flow. You know, so there's also something to be learned about how to work with that flow. And, you know, if I have something people need, then it's part of my destiny, and it's going to happen. And everybody knows how to get it to happen. And I don't have to worry so much about it, and do what you know, it's like, oh, in one moment it might come to, oh, make that phone call, or do that summit or podcast, or don't do anything and be quiet today. And just keep, you know what I mean, in the moment, just doing those things, and those things further everything.
Absolutely. That's so great, because it brings me to my next question and the books, and how I think what you just said, like everybody can relate to that. And that's amazing. So right before I move on to my next question, though, which is about your series of books, which, by the way, I think should be part of like the public school system's curriculum. That's for sure. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that before, but that's,
no.
Yeah, no, but I think they should. I mean, I use them as textbooks. I've earmarked them, written in them, highlighted them, and every time I think that they're beautifully written. And every time I reread a passage that I have highlighted, I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. You know, oh, that's so true. And I've experienced that. And so yeah. I really feel that your books feed me on a soul level, and that's amazing. So my next question, and you touched a little bit upon that, is, can you talk to us about like your development? And I know you've talked about this before, like how each book has led you to the next, and how either your experiences are reflected in the books, or the books get to reflect something afterwards in your life experience.
Yeah. I feel like everything kind of unfolded in natural timing. And so that I had a lot of years where I was just doing intuitive trainings for lots and lots and lots and lots of people. And then I used to always ask myself, actually, I still do, what's my next courageous act? Like, what haven't I done? What's the next stretch? And it was like, let's start writing. Let's get some books out. And the first one was The Intuitive Way, which is basically the culmination of all the training. There you go. All the trainings that I did, and made it into a course that was a lot like the Artist's Way book, but for intuition. And, so that just was a natural overflow of the previous thing, and it rolled along. And then the next one, actually, there was a hiatus. And during that time between books, I just learned a ton of stuff, but my publisher almost went bankrupt during that time. But then suddenly they got The Secret and all kind of these blockbuster, Emoto and The Messages in Water and all of that. And they got money back, and they paid me my royalties back. And I said to my agent, well, do you think I ought to propose a new book to them now? And I said, maybe it's an advanced intuitive way of maybe about empathy or something, like I thought that was the next thing. And I wrote to them, and they said, yeah. And the publisher was a kind of a friend, a woman friend. And she said, she went out on a book tour with Rhonda Byrne from The Secret, came back, and she said, Penny, I don't think people are ready for empathy yet. So can you go back to the drawing board? Because people were still really into the money, let's use the secret information to get financial success and all that kind of thing, very superficial. Yeah. So I went back and I totally redid everything, and it started to change and became Frequency, which is the second book, and I had no idea that's what was going to come out. And it kind of surprised me. And in fact, after I wrote it, I couldn't remember anything that was in it. And and then I had to go out on the book tour and talk about it in front of these big groups and stuff. And as I had the outline, and I was like, okay, I'm going to talk about these things. And then as I did, I started to get it. It's like something was teaching through me and teaching me at the same time. And I started to get it. And then it took off, and it's still selling.
Yeah.
It was a real bestseller. And the Simon & Schuster called and said, what are you doing? I said, nothing. Just like word of mouth, It's like, so, yeah. And so it was that way. It's like, I wouldn't have known that topic wanted to come through then. But it was timely. It was right on time. And, and often my books have been a little bit of the leading edge of before people catch on to it.
Yeah. And
so then I took a little break again. And then it's like, it's like planes waiting to land, then, it was time for Leap of Perception, which was really a much deeper dive into well, if we're going through transformation, what is happening to our brain? What is happening to our perception? Because I had gotten to a point where I realized that sorry about that, hold on, let me just close the door. Life goes on with phones and stuff. Okay. Anyway, so I started about Leap, and I had gotten to a point where I realized that it was all about perception, that it was the way we see reality that was going through a change. And it was like a very fundamental, almost, I called it an inner geometry, that we saw life like in a linear way along a line. Everything was dots on a line, past, present, future, beginning, middle, end, and here's me, and there's my goal over there. And that we had to cross empty space to get to places. And then that gap between the dots made everything be very slow, because it seemed like it took a long time to get between places. And I was just shown that everything's coming into the present moment because of the acceleration. and that meant that the present moment was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and encompassing the past and the future. And I started to get that. I was like, and my voice said, there is no future anymore. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
There's just potential realities that exist in the present moment with you that are higher frequencies of your current reality. And it's like a ball. So everything was becoming spherical. So that leap of perception is very much about that fundamental change. And that is, I think, one of the most important books in the series.
My favorite.
It won the best book of the year award for cosmology and so forth. But it's still
amazing.
Not as popular as the others, but I think it's incredibly important because we need to change that inner geometry and see there's no outside world, that there's this other modality. We can talk about that later if you want, but then, so that came in, and then I thought, well, I'm done with the series. And
nope.
And I waited, and then suddenly it just started coming to me that I needed to go in more depth about transparency. Like when we clear ourselves, there we go, that was the last one so far. And when we clear ourselves of fear and do, really the work of this transforming, that we become transparent. But what does that mean? So I really had to go and explore, what do we know so far about transparency? It's all about information. People think it's, just in the physical world, but I'm thinking, no, it's like this vertical transparency where we're becoming our soul, and we're seeing spirit is inside matter. It's not separate out there in heaven in some, galaxy far, far away. It is, it's right here. Mm-hmm. And so we need to act like the physical plane is the spiritual plane, and that merger is causing a huge transformation. And we're in the middle of it now, of all the fear coming up, so that we can clear it, so that we can become a fluid translator of higher thought and love and wisdom and new creations and innovation and all kinds of fun stuff into and through our personalities and bodies. So, but I thought, okay, now I'm done.
Not yet, I hope.
There's 2 more books that are they want to come through like twins right now. And so I've got to get myself, cleared, because it's very hard to do writing, as you probably know, and a lot of other stuff at the same time, because you can't get your thought process broken up.
Yeah. Your focus gets,
Yeah.
So I know I love all of your books, and I know like Frequency is a popular one, but Leap of Perception is also my favorite, about like honing into your home frequency and then like coming out of it and then coming back. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. And you said before, most of your books are sort of on the leading edge, and I think I had pre-ordered Transparency. So I got it as soon as it came out, and I started reading it, and it was amazing. And then at some point I had to stop, because it was a bit not too advanced intellectually for me, but I wasn't there energetically yet. I still, have judgments and stuff like that. And so I was still living in the opaque reality. And I was like, okay, it's just, it hurts me a little bit, like physically. So I'm going to put it aside. I'm going to try to integrate the information and then, move on. And so I finished it recently, so I had to digest the book, and I think that's amazing. Yeah.
Well, I noticed as soon as it came out, which was right after the election, I think, or something, that word kept coming up in the news. It was transparency or lack of transparency. I even heard somebody say the opaque reality on the news once.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I thought, wow, this is also timely, but it has not caught on like Frequency did yet. So I think it's like you said, it's not a complicated book, really. No. But I think in that way, is that the one in the end where I put like, what will reality look like when we're living it transparently?
Yeah.
That old things that we used to see in the old perception, when it transforms into this openness, it's going to look really different, like marriage and government and, you know, education and things like that. How would we revision those kinds of institutions that we take for granted now in a new way? You know, like,
Yeah.
what if we do have a female president of the United States pretty soon, you know, or whatever, you know? Um, yeah, it's so interesting to try to cast yourself into those kinds of more enlightened realities and see how much better things will function, and
Yeah.
more joyfully, more productively, efficiently, innovatively, all these things. And
Yeah.
then everybody's fighting against it now because they want to hang on to the old known way because they're afraid of the unknown.
Exactly.
And that just makes me think we need more education about what the stages are, that we are going through something. It does have stages. You can track it and you can get a sense of what it's going to feel like, you know, and it's not scary.
Yeah. So that's why I said I think your textbooks, your books, because I use them as textbooks, but I think your books should be in the public school system. And at the same time, like, they're so leading edge that when you, like you said, when you start to imagine yourself in these new realities and you start to feel them and they start to come up in the collective unconscious and conscious, well, then we can bring forth these types of realities, you know, and live them for real.
Yeah. Or even validate how they're already sneaking in, you know, like they are starting, especially with the young people, you know, and hierarchical structures that were very much based on linear perception. You know, there's one person at the top, are flattening so that all people are starting to be responsible for being creative and being enlightened and clear. And it's not power over, it's a collaboration, a convening of people on similar wavelengths who have different puzzle pieces that are putting them together to create healing in the world, you know, and new reality, which is the healing, of course.
Yeah. Amazing. So what do you mean when you say that we're moving from the information age to direct knowing or intuition age? And how you talked about it, but if you can go a little deeper, maybe on how it's affecting the human condition and how you've lived it in your interactions.
Well, I think the acceleration, I think everybody kind of feels like things have been speeding up. It's not a hard thing to understand. You know, it's like time seems much faster. You do something, you get repercussions almost immediately. It doesn't take as long, you know. And I'm seeing more and more everything in the present moment, for instance, like instances of healing immediately. You know, it's like it doesn't take a long time to get through all your old processing, like through psychotherapy anymore. You can shift it kind of like that, and then you're free. It's like, whoa, you know, this is amazing. Anyway, so I think, you know, we are seeing, we're seeing the new reality giving us little hints, like the very tip of the iceberg, what it's really going to be like. So anyway, gosh, trying to think of how to answer this. Can you ask that to me, just that last part again? Just
sure.
Let me get the words in my head again.
So how we're moving from information to direct knowing.
And that's going back to the acceleration, because, you know, if you go way back, you know, we had the hunter-gatherers, you know, that age, you know, where, you know, very slow in a way. Then it developed into the industrial age, where we got machines and the printing press and that all kind of things that allowed us to have writing and paper and blah, blah, blah. But then that accelerates. Each of these accelerates and jumps to the next consciousness level. So the industrial age and those previous ones were very much about the physical. They were related to the body, right? And everything very tactile, very, very much, you know, cause and effect. As you get into the mechanical age, it starts to be about information in a little way, you know, like printing and so forth. We're getting more education coming through, and that builds up momentum. At the end of the, you know, industrial age, we get computers. You know, before that, self-correcting typewriters. You know, wow, what an invention! But then computers, which is like, that's what jumped us into the information age. And now we're all about building our information and realizing how much we have access to. And then the internet comes in and just, it jumps us up more and more until we're at a point now where we have so much information and data that you can't process it with your old linear brain anymore, with your left brain. It's too much. And so what I started feeling was that there was this sudden jump or leap into the right brain, where everything's all at once. There's no linear processing, defining, separating, or anything. It's all right there. And I mean, I remember having an experience of thinking that how much I loved all the varieties of plants and flowers and trees and dogs and, you know, like the variety of life. And I was in some ways hungry for it. And I was trying to encapsulate it inside myself until I realized I was exhausted from doing that. And I kind of like, I don't know, I surrendered. And I went into this other world where it's all there, no effort. And I know it all, but I don't have to call it all out and define it.
Yeah.
Right. And it was such a relaxing thing, you know, that whatever I need comes forth off the shelf and shows up. And then when I'm done, it goes back on the shelf. And I had a number of those experiences where I stopped trying to memorize knowledge and have it all. And I allowed my right brain, which is the doorway from intuition into the total, you know, imaginal realm, collective consciousness, you know, a unified field, where that happened. And of course, I was working with intuition development anyway, which is right brain and body and heart and all that good stuff. And I started to understand that this is the leap of perception, is that it's too slow. The old way, we can't just stay in it. It doesn't work really anymore. You know, we have to be able to go into grasping large patterns of knowledge all at once, being impressed by wisdom, and our whole field changes. You know, it's not like bite by bite by bite little, you know, bits of information coming in and having to logically connect to the other one. It all connects, and it saves so much time. Mm-hmm. But you change when you learn to perceive that way, right? It's like a, you know, it just affects your whole being.
Yeah.
And then it affects everything around you starts to fall into this order, natural order. And you start to see differently. You see beauty, you see love, you see the interconnectedness. And so I realized that we were at the end of the information age, and that the need to be able to see and process information faster and more holistically was really a jump into intuition, or through intuition into that direct knowing state. But we're not going to lose the previous ones. You know, we still have our reptile brain and our midbrain and, you know, our left brain. They're all functions of our human consciousness. So we're not losing anything, but we're gaining this huge access to so much more. And that access to that kind of knowledge, because it's not separated and linear and defined in the old way, it is about compassion. It is about unity and the interconnection of all things and communion. And it is the spiritual values coming into the mind. And so that's what I mean by the intuition age. People call it a lot of things, you know, but I think that intuition is the main kind of consciousness we're going to be in. And it has a lot of effects on us, right? Of this sense of interconnectedness, and it's like the golden rule.
Yeah, absolutely. And so me and my girlfriends were just talking about this yesterday. You know, we're all independent workers, meaning we've all quit like our corporate job where, you know, one thing led to the next, and we knew where we were going because it was in a linear fashion. It was kind of easier. And so we are, we're trying to follow our excitement to the best of our ability in the present moment without any insistence on the specific outcome. But we've been so conditioned, you know, to use the left brain and use logic rather than using our emotions or intuition. So how do I trust more my intuitions when I can't necessarily see what came before or what's coming next?
Right.
So how do I trust that? Yeah.
Well, again, with the new consciousness, it's not either or anymore. You know, and the left brain always will say, yeah, but what about if I can't plan, or I can't make decisions, or I'm not going to know what my goals are? You know, like, okay, that it's like the left brain is the accessing mode. You get quiet, you get out of language, you go deep into your preferred state, I call it, you know, that harmony state. And you maybe have a question about what's next, or what do I really love, or what wants to happen now. And you sit quietly, and then suddenly it's just there. You get the sense. And like I'm going, what book should I write first? And I go, my left brain will argue with itself, you know, this one or that one. And if I get quiet, this other just pops up to the surface like those little magic 8 balls. You know, you get the answer. So when you've been programmed like in business and so forth, I think that you have to let the left brain be the implementer and the double check, you know, and it's making things conscious. And you don't, what is that phrase, you know, praise Allah, but tie your camel to the post, you know, like don't give up the physical world because we're in it, but get your guidance and insights and fascinations through your intuition and let it register with your body as a kind of a just right feeling, not a right or wrong feeling, just right for now feeling. And go ahead and step in and take action. See how that feels. See how the next thing feels. If you get a result, see if that's pleasing. If there's more to do more, you know, like stay in it. And then when the task is finished, you get quiet again and you go back into your intuition, say, and now what? Get quiet and see what comes to you. And it might be a phone call from a friend inviting you to do something, a project, or you don't know what it is, but it will be in the flow and probably just what you need next. Even if it's like some experience that causes you to do a shameful thing, you know, or something that you're not proud of, and you go, oh God, no, that was the next thing to look at because you gave it to yourself to clear, you know, and say, okay, my choice is I don't really like to be thinking that way anymore, you know, so I'm not going to, I'm going to change over. You know, so I think that also you can't make long-term goals anymore. You can have a general vision of something, and then you can come back down to your body and you can say, well, what task would be in alignment with the vibration of that vision, or what would the vision like me to do about it now? And then you get an idea, then you do it, make a phone call, write a letter, do whatever. And then you go back out and check with the vision again. Now what? Has it changed at all? Okay, do another task. And this is the rocking, the in and out, I call it the round trip, you know, that we must do with intuition, you know, right brain, left brain, or vice versa. I'm always dyslexic about the brain, but
yeah, because the left controls the right and the right controls
like
the left.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes. Yeah, that's what I think. Don't lock it down with the left brain.
Right.
Check. Feel, you know.
Right. So how important are emotions and what role do they play in this process?
I think there's a subtle difference between sensation and feelings. and emotion. Because
Okay.
to me, emotion is something where you haven't paid attention to the early signals. And so the energy builds up and builds up. And so if it builds up into the negative, you get frustrated and angry or jealous, or you go into those things. And if it goes too much into the positive, you get hyper and overexcited or zealous, and you didn't pay attention. Oh, that feels just right. So I don't pay that much attention to emotion in myself anymore. I pay much more attention to the early signs of expansion and contraction in my system.
Yeah.
If something feels just right, it's usually like, like energy's flowing and it feels so deeply comfortable. But if it's not quite right, I'll get a contraction, and different chakras maybe will get tight depending on what it is. If it's really dangerous, it's really a big shock, or I'll feel like I'm having a heart attack or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll stop and go, wait, what is going on here? And then I get quiet and I say, what am I aware of? And I check in, and then I tell myself, this is what we're noticing here, and so I dialogue a lot with that inner perceiver, I call it, or your inner voice, or your inner teacher, master, self, soul, whatever. Yeah.
So you would have the average Joe, for example, deal with their feelings of shame and guilt and embarrassment just by, taking a step back and looking within. Why am I feeling this way? Or maybe
if there's shame or guilt or something, it's usually about an action that you took. Mm-hmm. And that action is based on an idea. If you do something even the tiniest bit vengeful toward another person, even if it's not to hurt them, but it's in thought, and then you get found out, or somebody gossips and you gossip back and you go, oh God, I did that, and it's like you talk to yourself about ethics, basically. We all know what's in alignment with universal laws and what's out of alignment with it. And when we do something out of alignment, it doesn't feel good, and so we need to get back in alignment. And that just means saying, okay, I did do that thing. And why did I do that? Because I thought that thing was threatening to me. Why did I give the outside world so much power? I don't have to do that. I can choose the way I want to be and feel. And I don't have to give all that, the other, negative person or whoever it was, that power over my ability to be happy or be the way I want to be. So you process it back a little bit from, physical, through feelings, through thought and, beliefs, to why you feel vulnerable, and back to your original mistake of thinking there's an outside world that can hurt you, which is back to your perceptual adherence to the linear reality. Usually, I know that sounds kind of complicated, but don't stop in the emotions, because you'll never get out of it. You can't get out of it.
Right. Yeah. And so, and, I think once people start doing that also, they give other people the permission to do that. So let's say somebody did something embarrassing or shameful or something like that. Since you sort of processed it, you're like, okay, well, they're just in that space and they need to figure out why, they've done this so that they can choose something else.
And it's part of what I said in transparency too, that when you let yourself be exposed for all of what you are, you don't try to hide your embarrassments and shame or secrets or whatever. You're not broadcasting them, but you're not hiding them. And then you let people see you for whatever they can see. And if they see that you did something, a little below your ideals, let's put it that way, then it's, or you see that they did. It's like human, come on, everybody has done everything. Don't think you're the only special person who's been bad. It's not true.
It's not being special good. It's being special bad. True. It's true.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate then on the term, and I think we've covered it a little bit, home frequency, and how in that sense, like not to let, until everybody gives everybody else permission to be who they truly are, like not to let other people's vibes or criticism affect their choice and their home frequency.
Yeah. Well, I think of home frequency as kind of the soul in the body. When you stop identifying yourself with your left brain, which often is ego, when you do that, and you start to realize, oh, I'm a bigger thing. I have more wisdom. I have more love, and that's what I am in my core. And you can't locate it because it's not in the physical world so much. It's kind of everywhere. But that my true feeling of my true self is, you know, I'm loving. I'm beautiful. I'm generous. You know, all those nice qualities. You feel them, and you feel, oh, I am that way. You know, that's what basically like a happy, joyful child. And everybody has a way of kind of centering themselves back into that preferred state of purity, I would call it, or humility. It's like you're not trying to be better than you are because you're already amazing. And you don't have to try to do anything, just radiate it. You know, I said to a client this morning something about, well, you know, you just need to be yourself. But what is that? You know, so, you know, it's like if you just be your undefended energy, just be that presence of those qualities that you actually are, and you're not the overlays that came from messed up parents or, you know, religion or whatever did it to children in your pattern. Just get rid of those and go back into the state of, you know, what you naturally are, and just sit in it and both radiate it through your field, and also just attract anybody who wants to be in it with you. Don't try to do anything, you know. And so that home frequency is a state where you can center back into the core of what you are, and then come back out again from that level and repattern or synchronize the field of energy around you to that frequency. And then that acts as a set of instructions to the unified field way out beyond you, to all that is. So that anything that needs to come up and materialize in your life will come through that filter. So you'll get people on your wavelength. But people who are not having success usually are holding ideas that I only am partially okay and I'm partially successful, or nobody appreciates me, so I never get recognized and I always lose what I have. And so that's where their field is made out of. And that's their instructions to the world. And that's what they get.
That's what they get. Yeah. And that state, that home frequency state is so juicy, is so nice. And sometimes I wonder why I compromise myself out of that state of being. But then I know I can just go back to it and it's normal.
Right.
And
But it is because we have this habit. I think it's a tribal thing. You know, we frequency match with other people. And I'm sure, you know, mothers do it with their babies, you know, and for safety, we have to, through, you know, frequency, vibration, kinesthetic connection, whatever, we feel whether somebody's okay or not.
Yeah.
You know, we get it all the time. Oh, what about Nancy? You know, I should call her. It doesn't feel like pops into your head, you know, like something's going on with this person. I think I'll call. But I think that we do that. But when you get around physically around people who are either a lower vibration than your normal home frequency, who are maybe victims or depressed or whatever, partly through frequency matching, that's a safety mechanism. You'll go down and match them, and then you don't feel very good afterward. And you start to think the kind of thoughts they're thinking. You know, because you went into that level, and that level contains those kind of thoughts. If you stay at your home frequency and go around somebody like that, they get a chance to feel what it's like to get better or to rise up and feel a little more cheerful or a little more active or relief. If you get around somebody of a higher vibration, depending on how stubborn we are, you either will take advantage of it or envy them, and the left brain will say, oh, I wish I could be like that, but I'm not going to let myself, but you can adapt to feel that way yourself and say, what a good example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we kind of covered my next two questions, but I'm going to ask them anyway, see if there's anything else that comes up on that subject. So in Leap of Perception, again, my favorite book, you mentioned being in the flow, but that this flow is entirely in the present moment.
Yes, that's a weird thought, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So you can talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, I think the flow is the collective consciousness of all beings. And that includes trees and birds and bugs and everything. And that it is one big consciousness with a lot of frequencies in it, but the whole thing is evolving together. And that evolution is actually in the present moment. So the frequencies of any particular vibration are being affected by this acceleration. Okay, so everybody's evolving. Sometimes we resist it and try to stall it, but it's still happening. And so it just gets upsetting to that person. But other people who embrace it are just making a lot of headway and getting very, very clear. But it's all in the present moment is where you feel the flow. The flow is the emergence of the next right thing. And if you relax, it keeps presenting itself to you moment by moment by moment by moment. And then your job is to notice and feel the just rightness of what's coming and be looking at it and going into it and engaging with it. And why is this showing up now? What am I showing myself?
Yeah, that's why it's my favorite book.
Why, if I took action on this and did it, what would I be showing myself and others?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not flowing like this. That's linear.
No,
it's no longer happening that way. It's all in the ball right now. The whole ball shifts itself constantly to match the frequency of the overall evolution.
See, I never saw it from that perspective. That's amazing. Yeah. So we're connected, right? Connected globally in this age.
Yeah.
We're very much affected by events that are not in our direct experience. So how can we absorb, or do we really even need to absorb these types of events? And if so, how do we do so without losing our own sense of integrity? For example, I'm Canadian and I'm not directly involved in the experience of the re-election and stuff like that, although I am somewhat because we're close neighbors.
Yeah.
But how do I, understand what's going on, see it from a certain perspective and not lose my sense of integrity and what I want to move forward with in my life?
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. And also, I think it relates to events in the past as well, in what used to be. I was just writing an article about conspiracy theories, and I pulled up the thought of McCarthyism back in the 50s in the US, and that's still going on. You could go into that bubble of reality, and that kind of meanness and everything was happening too. It's all symptomatic of a certain kind of consciousness. But so, events happening around the world now, even though they're not physically near us, they're still connected in your field. And there are a lot of them. I mean, there's violence happening every minute. There's murders, and then there's joy, there's births, there's, everything, beautiful art. And so it just boils down again to let it all be. But if you notice it, if you notice certain things, then go into it, because that's the next just right thing that occurred in your reality. It could be a historical thing, like I said, like McCarthyism. Why did I think about that? Well, I had to go into and feel the way that was for everybody to get blackballed and accused of being communists and all that stuff. And it's so similar to today and the way a lot of this going on in our country and elsewhere. And so I have to look at who gave their power away, who is taking too much power, what's the, I'm looking at all the issues that are inherent in why those things happen to begin with. And that's an education for me. That's how I educate myself. But also, it's about, do I want to get upset about that and add energy into it by resisting it and being all emotional about it, panicked? Or do I just stay in my home frequency and be the observer and really, as the soul, have a look at how people have really lost their way in various ways, And then I can see, well, what could I do about it now in this moment? Right. And then I don't go off sides. I don't get dragged off into negative thinking again. And that's kind of the goal right now, I think, is let's stabilize ourselves so that we're not in a polarity anymore.
Yeah. Or that we don't create from a state of anger or resentment or frustration. And it's like you said, things are moving so fast and in the present moment, and we can adjust. So if we would just take a step back and understand from where we created that, where would the limitations in acting out, and so if we could just, it's not about wearing masks or choosing between two evils, it's about the feelings that brought us to this place in the first place. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And we can course correct. Yeah.
And that ability to think that way gets easier and easier. It's like it becomes more of a natural habit of checking in and saying, well, it's like a mindfulness practice, really.
Yeah.
As to just go in and say, oh, all these things are happening, but out of all the million awful things, why did I notice this one today? So let me just engage with it for a minute and it's kind of like mine it or milk it or, get the value out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. In Transparency, your latest book, you write, understanding is the true action of the heart. So I'm wondering how that relates to unconditional love, because I think we all have somewhat of a distorted definition of unconditional love. Anyway, I know that I had. I'm not sure if my definition is the proper definition now, but anyway, so how understanding is the true action of the heart. So how does that relate to unconditional love, and how would you define unconditional love?
Ooh, you got some good questions there.
Thanks. You've got great answers.
Well, I always understand the heart, not so much as a place of emotion, but of compassion or feeling with or knowing with. And it's actually, between the knowing wisdom place and the feeling place. It's like it's the hierogamous. It's the sacred marriage place between heaven and earth, and often the seat of the soul and the sense of your individuality within the divine. So what I think of the heart as, if you can have understanding of another person, which means often that you sense that they have vulnerabilities that are just like yours, that they're in some combination of love and fear, just like you are, maybe different percentages, but you can understand that they're souls. The soul is fine. It's not messed up. It's the mind, the left brain, that's caused these filters to come in so that we can't feel who we are. So you see them as the soul. And what that does, it activates forgiveness, which I think I've always misunderstood that word until lately, where I just got that it was letting things be the way they are, letting people be at the level that they're at right now and not judging them, because that makes them resist the judgment. Then they want to do the thing more or different, so let them be. They'll find their way through on their own, because everyone wants to evolve one way or another.
Yeah.
Through drama or subtlety, it doesn't matter. So understanding, to me, is the act of seeing with compassion and well, understanding, it's like, it's not such a big mental state as it is a communion state. It's like, I get it, how this person is trying, or how they got wounded and how that factors into who they are. But I also see who they are, and I know they're going to be that, and that they are doing that anyway. and so you see with the eyes of the heart. And so unconditional love, that's a nice goal, for spiritual teachers to tell people, I guess. But to me, it's like when you start seeing more fully and understanding people, and you start seeing the soul instead of just the personality, you start to understand and see that it's nothing but love. Love is like the main consciousness of spirit. There's so much of it we don't need anymore. You couldn't even get any more because there's so much of it. I already have all the love I need. I don't need to get somebody to give it to me. I have plenty to share, and I love feeling it in other people, but I don't have to get any. Let's play in it instead, when you get that revelation that there's nothing but love really, then that's unconditional, because you don't have yes buts, conditions on it. Well, I'll only be loving if they're like this, or only can have love if, the other person isn't doing that kind of untrustworthy thing. That's our left brain again, getting in there with some kind of a filter of shadows and stuff that keeps us from really experiencing holism. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
For you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How can we better act on our joy and our excitement when most of us are plagued, I guess, with the imposter syndrome or chronic capitalizing?
That's a good terms. Well, I guess to me, there's a process that as we evolve a little bit, we start to be able to pay attention to the left brain's dialogue, and what it says all the time, and it's usually negative declarative statements it makes about yourself and others and life, and why because it doesn't want you to change, because it's already defined things. And so it doesn't want to have to change those definitions. So you're not allowed to have any new flow because you have to adhere to this reality. And I think that, what did you call it? Chronic capitalizing on things. And
like I get a good idea and I'm like, okay, well, I have to do this and this and that, and it's going to bring me that much money, and I'm going to get this much many followers. And, like the chronic not doing something for the state of doing it or for the joy in doing it, but for what results it might reap. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been ingrained in us. Yeah.
Yes. And so I think that you get an idea, let's say, and the left brain gives it to you really in some ways, because it comes from the right brain and the intuition, but it has to go through the left brain to be described and crystallized a bit. So the left brain's very helpful that way. And it gives you, I could do this thing on my website, and you go, and then your left brain says, and I can make all this money. It goes into that thing. Well, if you can notice that particular action and rhythm of thinking, it's like it's like squirrels getting a lot of stuff, and then you go, I don't really like the way that feels. Okay, I have this idea about my website. Let me sit with it for a minute and feel how it would be fun to do this on my website, and would be fun to meet a lot of new people. And I always say self-entertainment is a high state, so you need to stay in that. Will this be fun for me? Will this be entertaining? Will I learn? And learning is entertainment. It's like, wow, new stuff. And anytime you get a surprise that's new. And so take the idea. There's nothing wrong with the idea. Just watch how you engage with it, and projecting ahead. Oh, look I'm going to have all this money. We're like, okay, wait a minute, stop, come back. The money follows your enthusiasm. I always think money is not out ahead of us as a goal, like the carrot in front of the donkey. It's right here in the periphery. It comes along with us if you're open and you love it and you let it roll along with you and come and go. If you need resources, You may get it by getting money, or you may get it by somebody just giving you a lead for something and then it comes in. It doesn't, you don't have to have money for everything, you know? So there's a lot of, so I'm not sure if I'm answering all of your question. Was there a part of that
So
that
it's
first
like,
part?
how do you keep acting on your joy and your excitement, because that's intrinsically what you feel like doing, what you want to do.
Right.
But you know, you're like you said, your left brain, you know, you have a mortgage to pay and you've made so many choices and you've sort of painted yourself into a certain box of society, right? So
yeah, but I think there are problems to solve that we have, like paying the mortgage or, you know, needing a budget. And, but it shouldn't be a fear-based thing that you're going, oh my God, you know, I have to have this much. There's a relaxation that needs to come around it and saying, yes, this will be interesting. I'll get this much, you know, by doing something. So what do I want to do to make this much money? You know, and let's make a game out of it. I just think take it more lightly, but still you're focused on it. And you're getting this idea of materializing something, because that's the creative process. And that's what we love to do as humans in this three-dimensional world. So, you know, and maybe more would like to come in. Maybe I'd like to have a little more because I want to expand and do this other project. Sure, that's a good reason. Why not? If you say what I want to the universe, will say, okay, we'll help arrange the logistics. Just don't interfere with us with negative thinking. And do what you get to do. We'll give you, you know, ideas for you to do. And we'll do some more, you know. So it's a partnership with all the beings. You know, you're not alone. And so part of it is really staying out of fear. And the other part is remembering who you are and what you love to do, which is create stuff.
Yeah, creative expression.
Or even uncreate stuff. Maybe you've created something that you're done with it and you can't get rid of it. You just want to let it go and solve it, you know. That's creative too.
Yeah. And I see it, I sort of parallel it from, like you said before, you know, you don't really focus on emotions, because emotions are sort of the result of something you've kind of created by default, and where you like could go back to the beginning and just
nip it
check
in the
to
bud
see next step. And I find that money is a bit like that also, you know, like rather than forcing yourself or trying to get money that's in front of you, it's not there, like step back into it and feel, you know, what it would like to be more comfortable with money and be okay with having more money, and that it'll come, and it comes in different forms also, like abundance and prosperity is just not, it's not just money based, and that there are other alternatives. And
think about it as a frequency of your field again, that you're striking that tuning fork, ding, you know, of your home frequency and putting it all through the whole space around you, that you live in that vibe, where whatever I need shows up out of the field. I don't have to attract anything because it's nothing outside of me. It's an emergence rather than attraction. And so if I need to pay the rent, but maybe I also need, from my soul's point of view, more people to talk to share ideas with, because that's more fun for my body. Bodies don't like money. They don't care. It's like, bleh, you know, they like real stuff, you know, sensation stuff. And they like doing things. So, so to have money, you relax your field and just figure it's whatever I need to do the next things I need to do to be self-expressive in the way I want to be self-expressive will show up. And I think that, like I said before, sometimes you get money in order to do it, and sometimes you get people who show up as resources, or people give you a new computer, or like, you know, whatever, you know, things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some things seem like they're free, and and you know, money is, you know, it's all kind of free. What you need, what is it? Ask and it is given. That was the old rule, right?
Yeah, Abraham, Esther Hicks.
Oh boy, before that.
Oh,
Wasn't that
yeah?
in the Bible, right? You know, like,
Oh,
no,
right.
it's a
Yeah.
universal law. And it's place attention on something, it really is what asking is. Saying, I want to, have more friends. I'm placing my attention on the reality bubble where I have more friends, or I want to have more money that I don't have to worry about paying the mortgage. And that would feel like this, and put a feeling state to it so that that matches your field. And then it's like the molecules start realigning, because everything's moving to a higher frequency or an expanded scope where that is normal for you.
Yeah.
I know it seems like magic, but it's not. It's
No,
universal law.
Yeah, we've been conditioned to feel like
Right.
magic, or magical thinking, but
or that everything is really, really hard and difficult and slow, and you have to deserve it, and all these old
you have to sacrifice
and teachings that are not really true. Maybe people couldn't handle the truth, like I go back to back then,
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think some people decided that some other people couldn't handle the truth, but
that's right.
I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here, but so we're kind of out of time, but I'm taking a few more minutes. So what's next for you? You're saying you have 2 books lined up?
Yeah.
Can you talk about them, or?
I don't think I want to yet, because I haven't decided on which one, but I will write them both. But
that's great. I'll have you for another interview.
They're both
two more
exciting.
Interviews when they're
there's
done.
So much to talk about. Oh my gosh, you can go anywhere.
I can't wait.
And I did do the 4 new courses. I've got those on my website under the courses page, and so those are kind of on-demand things. So
I will definitely link them in the description of the video.
Yeah.
That in your books.
And it's fun I love, I used to be a graphic designer, and I love that combination of imagery and words and stuff. And so that was fun to produce those and write those.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm a graphic designer too by profession. And so I loved it. And one of my imposter syndrome was always like, well, who are you? You don't have a PhD. You can't talk about these things. You don't know what you're talking about. And that was like kind of my self-criticism.
Right.
And when I met you, I was like, well, you see, she's great. She did it. She was a graphic designer, and she went into intuitive work, and she's really good. And so she can do it. I can do it. So
it kind of got an initiation into this when I started working in Japan years ago, because everybody there is very formal. What's your degree? What's your qualifications for this? And I just came to me to tell them I'm streetwise, that I learned it, and I was, young then, and men would not believe that I could know things,
Yeah.
But then I just thought, what, I could have gotten advanced degrees in school, but I started to go more into the depth of memory of knowing all this stuff. And, that was the next just right thing. It seemed like too academic, and I'd be stuck in my left brain too much, and it wouldn't be on purpose. Mm-hmm. So it didn't bother me, I was going to write articles for some magazine, and this academic professor guy said, well, you're not rigorous enough. And I went, what is that? I don't get it. I'm not in that world. But, that's in a way an advantage too, to talk into that world from a different, higher, odd, unusual angle or something, to open up the mind. So you just have to, I think, really believe in your desires.
Well said. Thank you so much, Penney, for this interview. I had such a great time, an awesome conversation.
Oh, me too. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Questions.
Thank you. And I'll certainly solicit you at some other time soon to.
Great. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah. So thanks again.
Okay.
Have yourself a great day.
I will. Thanks.
Thanks.